The Galactic Council chamber was designed to inspire fear. Larger than any city on Earth, it floated in the blackness of open space, surrounded by silent, distant stars. The walls were made of a dark, polished crystal that reflected the faces of hundreds of alien leaders. Some were impossibly tall and thin, others were massive, hulking figures covered in armor or scales. A few didn't even have faces that a human would recognize. This was a place of immense power. This chamber had witnessed wars end with a single vote. It had watched entire civilizations be erased from the galactic map. Yet now, it was utterly, unnervingly silent. At the very center of the vast hall, a massive hologram projected the image of a small blue planet. Earth smoke curled across its surface. Fires burned where great cities once stood. Orbital stations were visibly damaged, but they weren't completely destroyed. Something about the image felt wrong, deeply wrong. The invasion had begun 3 standard cycles ago. According to every known law of galactic warfare, Earth should already be a conquered world. Humans were a young species. They were loud, hopelessly divided, and constantly fighting amongst themselves. They possessed no unified galactic army, no advanced energy shields, no fearsome reputation to speak of. The Council had approved the invasion without a second thought, without even a debate. It was supposed to be easy. A simple, straightforward subjugation, but the reports coming back made no sense at all. Entire invasion fleets had gone silent. Communication rays simply stopped responding. High-ranking commanders vanished without so much as a distress call. The Council Supreme Overseer leaned forward in his hovering throne. His multitude of eyes narrowed, scanning the streams of incomprehensible data flowing before him. "This is impossible," he said, his voice slow and heavy. "Explain." A military analyst, a member of a species known for their unshakable composure, stepped into the light. Her voice trembled, a sound almost unheard of within these ancient walls. "Our forces achieved initial success," she began, her words echoing in the tense quiet. "Orbital control was established within the first cycle. Several major human cities were neutralized." Murmurs rippled through the assembled leaders. "Then why are we still here?" Another council member demanded, his voice sharp with impatience. "Why is Earth not yet a vassal of the Council?" The analyst swallowed hard, a very human-like gesture of fear. "Because humans adapted." That single word, adapted, hung in the air like a death sentence. It silenced the murmurs. The Overseer tapped a long, sharp claw against the arm of his throne. "Show us." The hologram flickered and shifted. It replayed footage from the initial invasion over Earth. Alien ships descended in perfect, textbook formations, their weapons glowing with confident, precise power. It was a beautiful, terrible sight. Then, the humans responded, not with the expected panic and chaos, but with silence. Complete and total silence. Entire continents went dark as power grids shut down in mere minutes. Satellites vanished from their known orbits, only to reappear hours later in completely unexpected positions, broadcasting new, encrypted signals. Human cities, once bustling with life, became empty shells overnight. And then, the counterfire began. Old, seemingly obsolete missile systems upgraded with strange, jury-rigged technology rose from hidden launch sites in mountains and deserts. Aircraft with no discernible energy signatures appeared from nowhere, striking at the fleet's weak points and vanishing before a target lock could be established. Ground forces moved through forgotten tunnel systems, ambushing invasion parties from below and behind. Every time the invaders learned a human tactic, the humans changed it. Every new strategy the invaders deployed was met with an even newer, more unpredictable human counter-strategy. Every loss seemed to make them stronger, smarter, and more unified. A council member from a warrior race rose, his face a mask of disbelief. "They are primitives. How are they doing this? Their technology is centuries behind ours." No one had an answer, because the next image that appeared on the hologram was even worse. A full invasion fleet, thousands of state-of-the-art warships, was shown floating dead in space. There were no explosions, no swirling debris fields, just a silence. An entire armada, inert and lifeless. The Supreme Overseer felt a cold, unfamiliar sensation tighten in his chest. It was an ancient, primal feeling he had not experienced in millennia. It was fear. Before anyone could speak, piercing alarms blared through the chamber. "Unknown signal detected," a calm, automated voice announced. "Signal origin, Earth." The chamber erupted into chaos. "That's impossible. Their communications can't reach this far. Block it. Block the signal now." But it was too late. Before any order could be executed, the chamber lights dimmed. The central hologram flickered, distorted, and then reformed. A single figure appeared, the human. He stood calmly, dressed in a simple, dark uniform with no visible weapons. The room behind him was Spartan bare metal walls, soft, functional lighting. There was no sign of fear on his face, no trace of weakness in his posture. He looked directly out of the hologram, as if he could see every single being in the Galactic Council chamber. And then he spoke. "You invaded Earth." His voice was steady, not loud, not angry, just a statement of fact. The chamber fell silent once more. The human paused, letting his words sink into the stunned minds of his audience. "Did you truly believe," he continued, his tone even, "that we would not respond?" Several council members stood in pure shock. Others reflexively activated personal defense fields, which fizzled uselessly against the transmission. The human folded his hands calmly behind his back. "You saw our disagreements, our long history of war, our countless mistakes." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "What you did not see was what happens when humans stop fighting each other." The overseer forced himself to speak, his voice strained. "This transmission is unauthorized. You will cease at once. You already lost control." The human interrupted, his voice never losing its calm. He gestured with one hand, and new holographic images appeared around him. They showed human fleets, small, mismatched collections of old warships and retrofitted freighters moving through space in chaotic patterns that no sane military strategist would ever approve of. Except they were working. They were flanking and outmaneuvering the Council's rigid, predictable formations. "You follow rules," the human said. "We learn from breaking them." The analyst whispered, her voice filled with a terrible awe. "By the stars," the human's eyes hardened, a glint of cold steel entering his gaze. "You attacked our home, our people, our children." Still, there was no anger in his voice, only a profound, chilling certainty. Earth is not united by one flag, not by one leader, not by one army. He leaned forward slightly, as if to share a secret. "But when you invade us, Earth becomes one." The transmission began to flicker, the signal fading. The human spoke one final time. "We do not want your worlds. We do not seek your extinction." He locked eyes with the Supreme Overseer across the void. "But understand this clearly." A final, deliberate pause. "If you bring war to Earth, we will bring it back to you." The signal cut. The hologram vanished. The chamber remained frozen, bathed in the cold, emergency lighting. No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the all-powerful council had no response. And deep in the silence, one terrible, universe-altering truth settled into every mind present. They had invaded Earth, and they had just made the greatest mistake the galaxy would ever know. 3 cycles earlier, the invasion of Earth had begun with confidence. The alien fleets arrived without warning. Thousands of massive ships dropped out of hyperspace above the blue planet, blocking the stars. Their commanders watched Earth from their bridges and felt no fear. To them, Earth looked unprepared. No planetary shield, no unified space navy, no advanced defense grid like older worlds had. "This will be over quickly," the High Fleet commander said. The first strike hit hard. Orbital stations were destroyed within minutes. Major cities were targeted next. Energy beams burned through the sky, shaking the planet. Fires spread across coastlines. Shockwaves rolled over mountains and oceans. From orbit, it looked like victory. But on the ground, humans were not screaming. They were moving, deep under cities. Alarms echoed through shelters built long ago and upgraded in secret. Trains powered by independent systems carried millions to safety. Communication lines shifted to backup networks no outsider knew existed. Entire cities went quiet. The invaders noticed this too late. "Why are population zones empty?" one officer asked, before an answer came. The first human counterattack began. Missiles rose from forests, deserts, and oceans at the same time. They were old designs, but modified in strange ways. They changed course mid-flight. Some split into smaller weapons. Others released clouds of metal that confused targeting systems. Alien defense grids struggled. Several ships were hit, not destroyed but damaged enough to break formation. That was when humans struck again. Aircraft with no energy signatures appeared suddenly. They flew low, using the planet itself as cover. They hit supply ships, command vessels, and communication relays. Then they vanished. The invaders tried to adjust. They sent ground forces next. Dropships landed near cities they believed were undefended. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready. What they found were empty streets and traps. Buildings collapsed at the wrong moment. Roads exploded from below. Automated weapons fired from hidden angles. Humans attacked, retreated, and attacked again. They never stayed still. Every hour, the invaders lost more units, and the humans learned. Human commanders studied every weapon used against them, every movement pattern, every mistake the invaders made. Then they changed their plans. The alien High Fleet commander demanded answers. How are they predicting us? No one replied, because the truth was uncomfortable. Humans were not just defending, they were experimenting. Weeks passed. The invasion fleet still controlled orbit, but their advantage was shrinking. Fuel supplies ran low. Repair ships were destroyed before reaching damaged vessels. Worse, long-range communication stopped working. Messages sent back to the Galactic Council never arrived. Then came the first major disaster. A full invasion armada was ordered to move into a stable orbit above Earth's dark side. It was supposed to be safe. Instead, space around them twisted. Human gravity weapons activated devices the galaxy believed impossible. For such a young species, space folded just enough to pull ships out of position. They crashed into each other. Then human fleets appeared. Old ships, different designs, no uniform shape or size. They attacked without formation, without warning, without mercy. Alien commanders tried to retreat. Hyperdrives failed. Space around them was jammed. One by one, ships went silent. No explosions, just darkness. Back on Earth, humans watched the sky. They knew the cost. Cities were damaged, lives were lost. But something had changed in every human heart. Fear was gone. In its place was focus. Across the planet, old rival nations shared data. Military secrets were opened without debate. Scientists worked day and night. Soldiers from different countries fought side by side. Earth was doing what it had never done before. It was fighting as one world. Deep inside a mountain command center, a human general studied the latest reports. "We cannot match them ship for ship," she said. "So we don't." Her officers listened closely. "We break their supply lines. We confuse their sensors. We force them to react." She pointed to the screen. "They expect us to follow rules. We won't." Another officer asked quietly, "And if they escalate?" The general looked up. "Then we show them what escalation really means." Back in orbit, alien commanders felt something they had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. Every move they made was answered. Every strategy failed after one use. Every victory cost too much. One officer whispered, "We should withdraw." The High Fleet commander hesitated. Withdrawing from a primitive world was unthinkable, but staying felt worse. Then came the final message. From a trapped fleet, static filled the channel. A damaged voice spoke. "They are not fighting to win today," the voice said. "They are fighting so we never return." The signal cut. Silence followed. For the first time since the invasion began, the High Fleet commander realized the truth. Earth was not weak. Earth was patient, and patience, combined with endless determination, was far more dangerous than any weapon. As the invasion slowed and losses mounted, one question spread through every alien mind. If this is how humans fight when they are outmatched, what would happen if they ever became equal? The Galactic Council chamber was no longer loud. After the human transmission ended, fear did not explode into chaos. Instead, it settled slowly, like cold fog filling every corner of the vast hall. The Council had faced powerful enemies before. Ancient empires whose starships blotted out suns. Machine minds that calculated the death of galaxies. Even star-consuming creatures born from the void between universes. But this was different. This new enemy was calm. The Supreme Overseer. His voice a low rumble that vibrated through the chamber floor. Finally broke the silence. "Explain human behavior," he ordered, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. Now, a cultural intelligence scholar floated forward from her delegation. Her species, ancient and patient, had studied thousands of civilizations, from their first sparks of life to their final, fading embers. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried an unnerving weight. "We misunderstood the humans," she said simply. The statement ignited a ripple of angry hisses and clicks. A delegate from a warrior race slammed a clawed fist on his console. "Misunderstood? They are a young species, violent, brutally divided." "Yes," the scholar replied, her tone unchanged. "That is precisely why they are so dangerous." The central hologram, which had been showing the silent, watching faces of human leaders, shifted. This time, it displayed Earth's own brutal history. It was a dizzying montage of wars, plagues, and collapsing empires. Cities burned, monuments crumbled, and entire populations vanished. This species evolved on a world that was actively hostile. The scholar continued, her voice narrating the grim spectacle. "Earth tried to kill them every single day. Vicious storms, continent-shattering earthquakes, relentless disease, and the constant specter of scarcity. The images changed, showing humans rebuilding, dragging themselves from the mud and ash again and again and again. They did not conquer their planet. They survived it. The Supreme Overseer watched, his multifaceted eyes narrowed in concentration. Most species unite first, the scholar said, her words cutting through the images of chaos. They achieve planetary peace, and from that unity, they grow strong. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Humans grew strong first, far from the Council's fearful gaze. Back on Earth, the human command centers were humming with activity. Not with panic, not with celebration, with meticulous, cold planning. In a hidden base deep beneath a continental shelf, a group of analysts studied alien behavior patterns. They weren't looking for ways to win. They were looking for how the enemy would fail. A young officer pointed at a data stream. They follow predictable chains of command. The Council issues an order to a fleet admiral. The admiral relays it to a unique commander. It's linear. An older strategist, a veteran of a dozen brushfire wars, nodded slowly. That's their weakness. She pointed to a complex, branching diagram on her screen. They need control. We don't. The core of human military doctrine was simple, but to the galaxy, it was horrifyingly brutal. Lose a city, keep fighting. Lose a fleet, find another way to strike. Lose communication, act on your own initiative. Humans didn't just train for success, they trained for catastrophic failure. Alien species, on the other hand, trained meticulously to avoid it. That single difference changed everything. In orbit, the alien fleets tried to reorganize after their initial shock. They attempted new formations, new attack patterns, hoping to overwhelm the seemingly disorganized human defenses. But the humans noticed immediately, and they adapted. They sent small, impossibly fast units to harass the edges of the formations. They ignored the massive warships and attacked the vulnerable supply ships instead. They even allowed some attacks to succeed, sacrificing territory just to gather more data. To the aliens, this looked like weakness, a sign of desperation. It wasn't. It was study. A captured alien commander sat in a secure human facility. He had steeled himself for torture, for interrogation under duress. Instead, the humans just asked him questions, not with threats or anger, but with a detached, academic curiosity. Why do you rotate command staff every 12 standard hours? Why is your entire fleet so reliant on centralized orders? What is your protocol if your leaders are suddenly gone? The commander remained silent, but the humans already knew the answers. They had lived through chaos their entire history. They understood it in a way the galaxy couldn't comprehend. Back in the council chamber, the scholar continued her unsettling lesson. Humans do not fear loss the way we do, she explained. They expect it. It's a fundamental part of their strategic calculus. A council member hissed in disbelief. That makes no sense. War is about preservation, it does to them. The scholar replied calmly, because they do not see this war as a single event, a contest to be won or lost. The hologram zoomed in on the blue-green marble of Earth. They see it as a process, an ongoing state of being on Earth. That process was accelerating at a terrifying rate. Civilian factories shifted production overnight. Old, outdated machines were repurposed to build crude but effective weapons. Civilian pilots, with no military training, flew vital supply missions through active war zones. Engineers and scientists slept beside their workstations, fueled by stimulants and sheer will. No one waited for orders from a high command. Everyone knew what had to be done. When the aliens managed to assassinate key human leaders, they expected the network to collapse. Instead, it became faster, more fluid, more dangerous. With no central authority, individual cells acted with terrifying autonomy. An alien fleet, desperate for a decisive victory, attempted a deep strike into Earth's southern hemisphere, targeting a major population center. They succeeded. They leveled a city, reducing it to glass and ash. For a moment, the watching galaxy held its breath, believing the humans would finally break. Instead, human broadcasts went out across all channels. There were no screams, no pleas for mercy, just names. The names and faces of the dead, displayed with quiet, solemn dignity. Quiet messages of loss, of remembrance. Then the attacks doubled. Human fleets, seemingly from nowhere, struck from 3 directions at once. Ground forces launched suicidal, but effective, counteroffensives. New weapons appeared on the front lines, rough, imperfect, but brutally effective. The alien fleet, caught completely off guard by the ferocity of the response, retreated in a state of utter panic. The Supreme Overseer clenched his claws, the sound of cracking chitin echoing in the silence. "They are turning grief into fuel," he whispered, his voice laced with a dawning horror. "Yes," the scholar replied softly. "They always have." She showed one final, haunting image, a human memorial site, recently built in the middle of a destroyed landscape. Rows of simple markers stood amidst the rubble. "They remember," she said, and then they continue. Aboard an alien flagship, an admiral whispered to his first officer. "They fight as if extinction is a normal part of life for them." His subordinate answered, his voice barely audible. "Maybe it is." Human commanders watched the enemy's panicked movements with cold focus. A general stood before her strategy staff. "They are afraid now," she said, her voice devoid of triumph. "That makes them dangerous, yes, but it also makes them predictable." An officer looked up. "What is our end goal, General?" The general paused, her gaze distant, "To make sure they never forget today." In the Galactic Council chamber, the scholar finished her report. "We thought the humans were divided," she said, her voice resonating with the final, terrible truth. "And they are, but only until their survival is questioned." The Supreme Overseer leaned back, the full weight of his civilization's catastrophic mistake settling upon him. "We didn't invade a planet," he realized aloud. "We invaded a species that has been fighting a war for its own existence since the day it was born." A profound silence followed. Then, a single, terrifying conclusion spread through the council like a plague. Humanity was not exceptional because it was powerful. It was exceptional because it refused to stop. And the war for Earth was no longer about territory or resources. It was about teaching the galaxy a lesson in fear that it would never, ever unlearn. The alien High Fleet Command believed they still had one advantage: numbers. Even after suffering heavy losses, their fleets outnumbered Earth's, their weapons were stronger, their ships were larger. Logic dictated that the war was still theirs to win. But logic, as they were about to learn, no longer applied to this conflict. Deep beneath Earth's surface, inside a command center carved from solid rock, human leaders gathered around a dim table of glowing screens. There were no grand speeches, no premature claims of victory. They were planning an ending. A senior strategist pointed to a star map crowded with moving icons. "They think we're desperate," she said, her voice calm and steady. "They think we are weak." A few officers nodded in agreement. "Good," she continued. "Let them." For days, human fleets had been pulling back. Our attacks grew smaller, our responses slower. The alien commanders noticed immediately, and the conclusion they drew was obvious. Earth was running out of strength. The High Fleet Command, confident in their assessment, ordered a final, overwhelming push. All remaining invasion fleets were to regroup into a single, massive formation above Earth's outer orbit. From there, they would strike deep, burn out the last pockets of resistance, and force a total surrender. The order spread like wildfire through the alien armada. Ships moved, in perfect, terrifying patterns, thousands of vessels aligned, their energy cores glowing like angry stars against the dark void. It was the largest alien military force ever assembled near a single planet. On Earth, our sensors watched every movement, every shift in their formation, and we said nothing. The alien commanders smiled, interpreting our silence as fear. They saw what they wanted to see. What they did not see were the small, almost invisible changes. Human ships began disappearing from their tracking systems, not destroyed, just gone. Communications across Earth went quiet, only to re-emerge on strange, narrow-band channels. All civilian traffic vanished from the space lanes. It was as if even the stars themselves were holding their breath. And then, the alien fleets entered the trap. Space itself began to shift around them. It wasn't violent or sudden, just a subtle, persistent pull. Human-made gravity fields, activated across invisible lines, tugged at their ships, pulling them slightly but surely out of their perfect alignment. Alien navigational systems, overwhelmed with conflicting data, struggled to correct for errors that shouldn't exist. Then the chaos truly began. Human jamming. Signals flooded the area. They weren't powerful or constant, but random and targeted. Every fleet received different, false data. Distance, speed, direction, all of it was wrong. Alien ships began to drift, slowly at first, then faster. Commanders screamed orders into their comms, but their fleets no longer moved as one. They were a flock without a shepherd, scattering in the dark. That was the moment our fleets returned. We didn't arrive in a neat formation. We arrived in waves. From above, from below, from vectors of space the galaxy believed were unstable and impassable. Old, battle-scarred human ships surged forward, their weapons firing in short, brutal bursts. We weren't aiming to destroy. We were aiming to disable. Engines failed. Weapon systems went dark. Life support flickered and died. Caught in the storm of our own making, alien ships began to collide. Some tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. And then, our minds activated simple, solid devices we had placed weeks earlier. They didn't detonate with massive force, but with precise timing, targeting command and control ships. The alien command network collapsed into total chaos. In the midst of the pandemonium, the High Fleet Command attempted to regain control. Stabilize formation. Report, the High Commander ordered from his flagship. No one responded. A moment later, his own vessel shuddered as its engines cut out. An eerie silence filled the bridge, a silence more terrifying than any battle. Human boarding craft latched onto the disabled ships. Our soldiers moved quickly, efficiently, and silently. They didn't shout or celebrate. They simply moved with a quiet, unwavering purpose. On the bridge of one captured alien vessel, a human officer faced the trembling, defeated crew. "This ends now," he said calmly. The alien commander stared back in utter disbelief. "How?" he stammered. "How did you plan this?" The human officer paused, letting the question hang in the air. "We planned to lose," he replied. "That gave us the time we needed." As the final pieces of the trap closed, entire alien fleets were rendered powerless. Some ships were destroyed in the initial chaos. Most were captured or left drifting, helpless in the void. Hours passed, then days. No reinforcements came for them. Why? Because we had already blocked every hyperspace route leading to our system. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, emergency signals poured in. Entire fleets were reported lost. Their command structure was shattered. There was no clear enemy position, no front line to reinforce. The supreme overseer of the council rose slowly, his face a mask of shock. "They did not defeat us with strength," he said quietly to the assembled delegates. "They defeated us with patience." A scholar at his side nodded grimly. "And with unity, on Earth." The sky grew quiet, for the first time since the invasion began. There were no explosions, no wailing alarms, no cities burning against the night sky. Cautiously, civilians stepped outside, looking up at the heavens. The stars were clear and peaceful. In orbit, thousands of alien ships drifted silently, monuments to their own arrogance. The invasion was over, but the war was not finished. Human commanders met once more in their underground bunker. "We have them," an officer said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and anticipation. "What now?" The senior general looked at the image of Earth on the main screen, a blue and white jewel hanging in the dark. "We send a message," she said, "not of victory, of warning." Across space, human transmitters activated on every captured ship, every open channel, every listening post in the galaxy. A single message began to spread, carried on waves of energy to the farthest corners of known space. Earth had not fallen. Earth had endured. And anyone watching, anyone listening, could see the undeniable truth. Invading Earth was never just a battle. It was a test, and the galaxy had failed. For millennia, a chilling silence had descended upon the galaxy. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the quiet of something missing. Across thousands of star systems, from the core worlds to the outer rim, communication networks crackled with fragments of panic and confusion. Entire fleets, once the pride of ancient empires, had simply vanished. Vital trade routes, the arteries of galactic commerce, were choked off, their ships gone without a trace. Mighty empires, accustomed to unquestioned dominance, waited for reports that never came. A shadow had fallen, and no one knew its shape. And then, a single signal cut through the fear. It didn't force its way through with raw power or overwhelm their networks with aggressive code. It was calm, almost polite. It simply asked to be heard. In the heart of the Galactic Council chamber, a place of immense power and history, defense systems flared to life on pure instinct. Shimmering energy shields rose, sealing the grand hall. Elite guards, clad in ceremonial armor, snapped into defensive positions, their weapons ready. But the signal remained unchanged, patient, waiting. The Supreme Overseer, his face a mask of hardened authority, hesitated for a beat. The entire galaxy was holding its breath. "Open it," he commanded, his voice echoing in the tense quiet. The chamber lights dimmed, focusing all attention on the central holographic projector. A figure materialized in the shimmering blue light. It was a human, the same human who had appeared before, a harbinger of defiance. He wore a simple, unadorned uniform, carrying no weapons, no symbols of rank or power. He didn't bow, he didn't threaten. He simply stood, a pillar of stillness, and waited until the last panicked whisper in the chamber faded into absolute silence. Then, he spoke. You invaded Earth. The words were not an accusation, but a statement of fact, carrying across the vast hall with the same cold clarity as before. This message is not revenge, the human continued, his voice even. It is information. Several council members, beings of immense age and power, shifted uneasily in their seats. For generations, the human said, his gaze sweeping across the assembly, the galaxy has operated under a single, flawed belief that younger, emerging species must be guided, controlled, or if necessary, removed for the greater good. Behind him, images flared to life in a hologram, worlds burning under orbital bombardment, ancient cultures erased, their art and history turned to dust, foreign flags being planted in the ruins of conquered cities, all in the name of order and stability. You believed Earth was just another step in that long, bloody pattern. The human paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You were wrong. The holographic display shifted dramatically. The audience gasped. Pictured before them were the missing fleets, the pride of the Cathar, the might of the Vexian Armada, now floating dead and powerless in the void of space. Their weapons were offline, their engines cold, but scans revealed their crews were alive, unharmed, simply waiting in their metal coffins. We could have destroyed them, the human said, his voice dropping to a quiet, chilling tone. Every ship, every life. We had the power, but we chose not to. The Supreme Overseer leaned forward, his knuckles white as he gripped his console. Why? The question was a hoarse whisper. Because destruction teaches fear, the human replied, his logic irrefutable. Memory teaches restraint. He began to walk slowly, his projected form pacing across the chamber floor. Humans are not a peaceful species by nature. We know this about ourselves. We accept it. Brief, violent images flickered behind him, scenes of Earth's own brutal wars, a montage of humanity's long struggle with itself, before fading away. But we have learned to be controlled by something stronger than our capacity for violence. He stopped, his eyes finding the Overseer's. Attachment. The word seemed alien in this hall of cold, political calculus. Our home, our people, our history. The human looked directly at the council members, one by one, as if seeing into their very souls. You attacked those things, the very things that give us meaning. A heavy silence fell once more. We did not unite against you because of a lust for power, he continued, his voice resonating with conviction. We united because you left us no other choice. The hologram zoomed out, revealing the planet Earth. It was scarred, damaged, its continents bearing the fresh wounds of war. But it was vibrantly, defiantly alive. This war taught us something profound about ourselves, the human said. And now it will teach you. An elderly council member, a scholar from a species known for its wisdom, spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. What do you want from us? The human's answer was immediate and absolute. Recognition. A ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. This was not the language of a conqueror. We do not seek dominance. We do not claim your territory. We demand no tribute. He raised a single finger for emphasis. We demand respect. His voice hardened, shedding its quiet patience for a core of steel. Earth will not be ruled. Earth will not be invaded. And Earth will not be tested again. Behind him, a new holographic document appeared, scrolling with galactic scale data. It was a treaty, but written on human terms. The articles were clear, simple, and non-negotiable. Any fleet entering Earth-controlled space must announce itself and state its intentions. Any hostile action, no matter how small, would be treated as an act of total war. There would be no exceptions. There would be no second warnings. The council members broke into frantic, hushed whispers. The Supreme Overseer, collecting himself, spoke carefully. And the fleets you have captured? The human folded his hands behind his back. They will be returned. Shock, pure and unfiltered, silenced the chamber instantly. This was unheard of, incomprehensible. They will be repaired. The human continued, each word a hammer blow to galactic doctrine. They will be resupplied. Their crews will be intact and unharmed. His eyes sharpened, locking with the Overseer's. And they will be returned with their memories. He leaned forward slightly, a subtle, menacing gesture. So they can tell their leaders, their families, and their children what happened when you made the mistake of invading Earth. The chamber remained frozen. Never in recorded history had a victorious species acted this way. Never had such overwhelming power been used not to conquer, but to set a boundary, to draw a line in the sand of space itself. The human straightened up. We do not ask to join your council today, he said, the statement hanging in the air. But we will. A beat of silence. And when we do, it will be as equals. The hologram of the human began to fade, its light dimming. Just before it vanished, his voice echoed one last time through the hall. "One last thing," he added, his tone low and thoughtful. "You saw our weapons. You saw our ships. You saw our strategies, born of desperation." His voice dropped to a near whisper, a final, haunting promise. "You have not yet seen what we build when we have time." And then, the signal was gone. The chamber was plunged back into its own dim light, the silence now deafening. Minutes passed. Finally, the Supreme Overseer slowly, heavily, lowered himself back into his seat, the weight of a new reality crushing down on him. "The invasion has failed," he announced to the silent hall. "Completely." A scholar whispered to their neighbor, awestruck. "They defeated us without conquest." Another replied, their voice full of a new kind of fear. "No, they defeated our certainty." Across the galaxy, the news spread like a supernova. Earth had not fallen. Earth had not been glassed. Earth had drawn a line. Overnight, ancient trade alliances began to shift. Military doctrines that had stood for eons were furiously rewritten. In the most prestigious academies, instructors removed old lessons on galactic expansion and replaced them with a new, stark curriculum. Lesson 1. Do not underestimate a divided species, for they know the true cost of unity. Lesson 2. Do not mistake youth for weakness. And the final, most important lesson, burned into the mind of every future commander: do not invade Earth. And on Earth itself, humans watched the stars, but there were no wild celebrations. There was only a profound, collective sense of relief. Families began to rebuild. Cities started to repair their scars. Memorials to the fallen were raised, not in grand parades, but in quiet, solemn ceremonies. And deep within humanity's command centers, hidden from the galaxy's view, new projects were already beginning. They were not projects of war, but of preparation. Because humanity had learned its own lesson. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknown powers, and someday it would surely test them again. But next time Earth would be ready. The galaxy did not change in one day. It changed slowly, like a deep wound that doesn't bleed at first, but never truly heals. In the weeks after the human message, the captured alien fleets were released, exactly as promised. Their ships were repaired. Their crews were fed. No one was harmed, but every commander returned home carrying something far heavier than defeat memory. They told the same story again and again, on 1,000 different worlds, in 1,000 different languages. They spoke of how Earth did not beg for its life, how humans did not chase a glorious victory on the battlefield, how the war ended not with conquest, but with control, a chilling, precise control that had brought the galaxy's most powerful armadas to their knees without firing a final, fatal shot. Across the Galactic Council, emergency sessions became routine. The Grand Chamber, once a symbol of unshakable order, now hummed with a nervous energy it had never known. Old assumptions about warfare, dominance, and power were questioned, then quietly erased from military doctrines that had stood for millennia. For the first time in its long and storied history, the Council added a new classification to its official archives: Earth-independent strategic civilization. Status: do not provoke. It had never been done before. An entire species, so young on the cosmic scale, was granted a status that placed it outside the normal hierarchies of power. Some elder species, whose civilizations had watched stars be born and die, protested. They are still young, they argued in hushed, indignant tones. They lack refinement. Their methods are crude. Others answered with silence, a heavy, knowing silence, because refinement, they knew, had never stopped a species from falling, and they had seen many fall. On distant worlds, in the hallowed halls of military academies, instructors paused. They hesitated when they reached the section once titled Emerging Civilizations. Earth's name was no longer there. It had been moved, placed under a new, stark heading: Existential Risks. Cadets who had once dreamed of glory now studied humanity not as a potential conquest, but as a force of nature unpredictable, unstoppable, and to be avoided at all costs. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the planet healed. Cities that had been reduced to rubble rose again, faster than anyone expected. But humans were used to recovery. They had rebuilt countless times after wars, disasters, and mistakes of their own making. It was a muscle they had exercised throughout their history. Children returned to schools, their laughter echoing in newly built parks. Trade routes reopened, and the skies, once choked with smoke and debris, slowly cleared. But Earth was no longer the same. It was scarred, yes, but it was also hardened, hidden beneath the tranquil surfaces of oceans, buried deep within remote deserts, and carved into the hearts of mountains. New facilities grew, These were not built in secret. The galaxy was watching, after all. They were built in readiness. A clear, unspoken statement to the cosmos. Human leaders met often, not in grand palaces to rule the world, but in simple, functional rooms to protect it. They didn't crown heroes or build statues to victorious generals. Instead, they honored workers, engineers who designed resilient systems, medics who saved lives against impossible odds, pilots who flew into the heart of danger. They celebrated the ordinary people who, when faced with extinction, simply refused to break. In one of those quiet meeting rooms, the very same human envoy who had delivered the message to the council stood before Earth's representatives. The weight of recent history hung in the air. "The galaxy is watching us now," one leader said, her voice a mix of pride and apprehension. The envoy simply nodded. "Let them." Another leader leaned forward, asking the question on everyone's mind. "What if they come back?" The envoy's response was calm, devoid of fear. "They will." A silence fell over the room. Then, another question. "And next time?" The envoy's gaze drifted to a large screen where an image of Earth rotated slowly. Blue, green, and beautiful. "Next time," he said softly, "we won't be alone." Months turned into years. Human ships began to appear beyond their home system. They didn't travel in imposing fleets bristling with weapons. They came on missions of exploration, diplomacy, and trade. They arrived not with demands, but with offers. To share knowledge, to build infrastructure, to establish mutual defense. Some species, still reeling from the shock of Earth's victory, rejected them out of fear. But others, intrigued and perhaps a little desperate, listened. Slowly, carefully, a new truth began to ripple through the galaxy. Humans remembered names. They remembered faces. They kept their promises to the letter. And they did not forget betrayal. This reputation, built one interaction at a time, proved to be a more powerful shield than any weapon. On one distant, sun-drenched world, a young alien scholar, full of curiosity, asked an elder, "Why does no one threaten Earth anymore? They are still just one planet." The elder, who had seen the rise and fall of empires, looked towards the stars. "Because," he answered, "the galaxy learned what happens when you force humans to choose." "Choose what?" the young one pressed. The elder's voice grew quiet, almost a whisper, between fear and survival. Back in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, the Supreme Overseer stared at the empty central hologram, where the human envoy had once stood. The chamber, designed to hold representatives from 10,000 worlds, felt smaller now, emptier. Earth had never returned for a second speech. It didn't need to. The message had already spread, carried on the whispers of returning commanders and the silent updates to military files. Then one day, a formal proposal reached the council. A simple, direct request. Earth seeks observer status. Debate erupted. Fear followed close behind. But in the end, there was acceptance. Because refusing Earth was no longer a viable option. It was a risk no one was willing to take. On Earth, the news was received not with celebration or triumphant parades, but with a quiet, collective acknowledgement. A job done. The envoy prepared for his journey back to the council chamber. Before leaving, he stood alone on a high balcony, looking down at the planet spread out below him. Scarred, resilient, alive. A junior officer approached him, her expression thoughtful. "Sir, do you think they truly understand us now?" The envoy considered the question for a long moment, watching the clouds drift over rebuilt cities. "No," he said finally. "But they respect uncertainty." The officer frowned. "Is that enough?" The envoy allowed himself a slight, knowing smile. "It always has been." As his ship lifted into the quiet of space, Earth turned beneath him blue, fragile, and unbelievably stubborn. A world that had been invaded, a world that had endured, and far across the vast, silent expanse of the stars, other civilizations watched that small, distant planet with new eyes, not as prey, not as a rival, but as a warning, a constant reminder, because the galaxy had learned its final, indelible lesson about humanity. Humans do not seek war. They do not worship power. But when you push them to the very edge, when you threaten their home and their future, they do not fall. They adapt. They unite. They remember. And anyone who invades Earth again will not be met with anger or rage. They will face resolve. A cold, unified, and unbreakable resolve. And that, the galaxy now knew, was far, far more terrifying. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the edge of the universe.